Hello, folks. It says I'm live. Hopefully I am. Hello, thank you all for being here. Welcome back to MOONSHIRE Monday, the weekly live stream on my channel where I work on my game called MOONSHIRE. It's on Steam right now. There's a link in the description if you want to try out the free demo that's currently available. But, you know, there's still a lot of work to go. I'm able to make some progress. And this stream, I'm just going to be doing a little bit more work, probably more level design stuff, and just chatting with all of you guys. Hopefully this stream is live. Let me double check real quick. I'm still kind of a noob to streaming, so bear with me a little bit. Yeah, it looks like I'm live. Looks good to me. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I think there's a bit of a delay between the stream and the chat. Let me see if I can change that. It's on low latency. Yeah, I'm the GOAT. Thank you. How do I get better at pixel art? Just a lot of practice. Next stream, I'm going to try using the ultra low latency, because I have it on low latency, but I'm still seeing like 30 seconds before you guys get what I say. Like, that's kind of a big delay. It'd be nice if I could say something and then like immediately hear from you guys and read the chat in real time. That'd be better. I've started making my own project, but IDK whether you use Pygame or Love2D. They're both really similar, so whichever one you like more is probably for the best, because they're both just lightweight frameworks. Okay, a goal I have with this live stream is to not stutter, to take it easy, reduce mouth noises, because I watched back my previous stream and I said some good stuff, but I have a problem with stuttering. I talk very fast, and I have a tendency to just slur my words or stutter, and I need to work on that. So that's something I'm going to be conscious of during the stream. How do you do enemy navigation and AI, by the way? So I have a video on my channel, actually, specifically about that. Oh yeah, he uses Love2D bot. I should actually put text on the screen that shows that. I'll do that now, actually, before I forget. How about text, and then okay. Whoops. And the text is going to be, my engine is Love2D. And I'll say okay. And I'm gonna squeeze this down. I'm gonna put this right here. There we go. That should help. I'll make it a little bit nicer looking for the next stream. But yeah, this is definitely the most common question I get, which is what game engine do I use? And I use Love2D. It's kind of a niche framework, and not too many people know about it, but I really like it. It's kind of a little challenging learning curve. It's not as easy as something like Unity or Godot, but I love using it. Love, so to speak. Here's a little sneak peek of what I was working on before. I'm still reworking the levels. That's still the main goal. But I'm working on this little area, and it has snow. Although I've shown the snow before a long time ago, but I made it a little bit better. Part of what I think makes this snow look good is that the little snow particles, they are different sizes, so they're not consistent. There's a bit of randomness in there. And the directions and speeds that they follow, it's like all at a kind of like a diagonal like this, but it's different angles and different speeds, and some of them are more horizontal than others, so I think that works out a lot. Do you think your game would look better with hand-drawn art style? It would be a very different game. I mean, you can make any art style work and look good, because I've seen some really good hand-drawn art styles. Like, have you seen Slay the Princess? That game looks really nice. It's not real time though, it's like a visual novel, but the hand-drawn art style, it always appeals to me. I think it looks nice. I'm trying to think of any hand-drawn games that are like an action game or where you play a character. You've been making a game for 3DS with love potions. That's awesome. I haven't tried making any sort of 3DS game. Oh, here's two wells. One of them is full and one of them is empty. But I showed this before, where the well is how you go underground now. So this is an area I could kind of start putting a little bit of work on today, because I don't have walls in place. This well shouldn't be here either. I can change those things. Hollow Knight is hand drawn. Yeah, I guess it is. I guess it is hand drawn. It's funny because it doesn't really look hand drawn. I use Slay the Princess as an example, because that is like, it's like on paper. It's like a paper scribble style. It really looks hand drawn. And yeah, I bet Hollow Knight is also hand drawn. I think when people say hand drawn art style, I think they're more talking about like they actually draw on paper and then they import it into the game, which I don't think that's how Hollow Knight did it. I think Hollow Knight is digital art, but it is like highly stylized as if it was drawn by hand. You love the game. Can you please tell us Unity good for 2D? Yeah, of course. Any engine is going to be good for 2D. You can use Unity, you can use Godot, you can use Love 2D, you can use Game Maker. Any engine that you try out is going to work just fine. I always say just pick one, and if you like it, just make a game with it, because they all can make good games. That's the main thing. One of the games I'm making is literal hand-drawn art. That sounds cool. I would love to see that. I'd love to see more games that use a unique art style like that. Good morning, Moonshire Monday. Fun fact, Lua means moon in Portuguese. Yeah, I learned that recently, and that was an accident. I didn't really mean for the moon sort of theme to seep over that much. I called the game Moonshire mainly because I thought it was a cool name, not because it is related to the name Lua, but that's just a happy coincidence, so I'm not complaining. Like Cuphead. Oh, Cuphead's a great example. I think Cuphead might be the best example. That's a really good hand-drawn style. Godot is becoming increasingly popular with indie devs. Yeah, did you guys see the stats for GMTK Game Jam? By the way, anyone participate in GMTK Game Jam? I did that one year, and I really, really enjoyed it. But one thing that was different this year, regardless of everything else, is that Godot was a huge, huge boost in games made with Godot. Because typically, the GMTK Game Jam, it's like mostly Unity. It's mostly Unity games. Or I should say that's the primary engine that's being used. But this year, it's a lot more even, where Unity is like 45% of the games, and Godot is like 35% of the games. So Godot is catching up quite a bit. I really do think that the sort of drama that happened with Unity last year, it seems like it actually had an impact. How did you learn to do pixel art? It's just a lot of practice. So I started when I was a kid using Game Maker, and Game Maker has a built-in pixel art editor, so I just made a lot of sprites with that. And a lot of this pixel art isn't made by me from scratch. A lot of it comes from asset packs, and then I edit it to match my style. But like the main character is made by me, and I established like the hard outlines and the color palette, and the plants are drawn by me, and yeah, the weapons are drawn by me. So that it's a mixture of using your own art style as well as leveraging other people's pre-made assets, and then I hire out some pixel art because like this character here was made by Ellie, and actually most of the characters are made by Ellie, and main menu is made by Tony. So it's a big mixture. Oh, Godot was higher. Godot was higher than Unity? That's extremely crazy. I am shocked that we are in the timeline where Unity is not the vast majority. I'm glad Unity is not. Not because I'm a Unity hater or anything. I think Unity is a really good engine. I think it's a great product. But the only problem I have with Unity is what we saw last year, is that it's a publicly traded company, and with that comes some obligations to shareholders. I say that with any publicly traded company, is that when you are publicly traded, you have to make decisions. You have to make choices. Do I want to please the shareholders, or do I want to please our customers? Because if you please your customers, sometimes that means you make less money. But if you please shareholders, that means more money is being made. And sometimes that means that you're making customers mad, which is kind of what happened last year with Unity. And it's starting to kind of bleed over into usage. But I just think that was a one-time blunder. I don't think that people should take this as like the end of Unity. I don't think it's the end of Unity. I think Unity is still a really good engine. And also their policy that they implemented, the whole per install sort of change, because that was the big controversy, right? Is Unity implemented this policy that's now said that your games we're gonna charge you per install. And I actually think that's a good policy, believe it or not. I think it's a good policy to have per install charges. But what's not good is the retroactive aspect of it, meaning everyone who already published a Unity game, suddenly the rules are changing on them. Have I seen Gugus? Yeah, he comes into the chat sometimes. We comment on each other's videos. So, yeah, with Unity, it's like, what happened was they want to implement this policy where per install is going to charge you, and I think it's a good policy because have you noticed a problem with like mobile games where you'll download a mobile game and it's just garbage? It's just complete garbage. They might have even misrepresented themselves. They might have shown a fake ad to get you to download this app. There's a lot of shovelware garbage products out there. And guess which engine is most popular for producing shovelware? It's definitely Unity. Unity is like the engine for producing like crap products that trick people into downloading their bad like things so they can get an install. It's kind of a problem. So I think the per install thing was meant to combat that. It's meant to de-incentivize people from making fake Unity apps, getting them to install them, and then immediately delete them. So like with a per install, someone doing that business model would kind of fail because they are going to be suffering too many charges on these per install basis because people keep installing their game and uninstalling it because of a false advertising sort of thing. It's a problem that they're trying to solve, and I think that the way that they did it recently wasn't it. Like they just handled it really poorly with the whole retroactive thing. That was a big mistake. Danny, yeah, I like Danny. It's sad that he doesn't make videos anymore. I think Google needs to be responsible for its ads. Yeah, so the specific example I'm thinking of is like those mobile games where it's like pull out the pin and see if you can get the stuff to fall on the guy in the right way. And the thing is, when you download the game, it doesn't look anything like the ad. It's completely misrepresented. The ad shows it being one game, and the game that you download is completely different. And most people at that point will uninstall it, but some people don't. And that's the whole business model, is that they're hoping that some people will download the game and not delete it after they realize it's not the right one. It's so crappy. So I think that was what Unity's goal was. And they just did it in a bad way. I kind of would like to play the pull the pin game, and I think that's why that ad works, is because it intrigues you. You see the little puzzle that they're showing on screen, and you immediately think, oh, here's what I would do. And, you know, you get that temptation to try it yourself because you see the ad and like, they're not doing it right. I could do better. It's all these mental games with advertising. And then I don't think it's a problem doing it that way or doing advertising that way. But what I do have a problem with is showing a game that's not actually the real game, which is what the problem is. Use Unreal Engine. Awesome. I enjoy watching to see work on a different engine. I agree. I love watching content that takes place in a different engine because, one, it's fun to see the similarities because I don't think that most engines are that different. I think game engines are really different from game frameworks, sure. But like Unreal is pretty similar to Unity, which is pretty similar to Godot. And, you know, obviously there's differences in the way that they're set up is different, but overall, once you know one of them, picking up another is going to be a lot simpler. And that's different from like what I'm working with here. What I'm working with here is a framework where it's just like code libraries, and I have to use external tools like this one called Tiled in order to fill in the gaps, because since it's not an engine, it doesn't have everything built in. It doesn't have a level editor built in, so I have to do that work myself, and you know, it's kind of a pain if I'm being honest. Also, what I'm doing right now is I'm just pasting in little blades of grass. That's another thing that's kind of annoying with the level design is that I can't see the blades of grass. I can only see these little pins of where the blades of grass are going to go. And I would say that that's a pretty big downside to working with a framework over an engine. Take Box 2D, for example. All three had an implementation for 2D physics. Exactly. Love 2D uses Box 2D for its physics, and that's what I actively use for my game. I imagine, yeah, it's an open source library, and it can be compatible with other engines. So once you know, I bet you can't free the king by pulling the pins. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the kind of game that I'm talking about. Or there's other games where it's like something like a pencil, and it's like going through all of these blocks and you have to guide the pencil to go the right way. I've seen all kinds of these really weird ones. You saw the grass torch with the movement. Looks good, thank you. I think it looks good in game over here. Because I just have these little blades of grass. What I originally set out to do with the blades of grass is... I guess I could probably... No, I can't show that, I'm sorry. What I wanted to do was have like full fields of grass where it's like you wouldn't even see the green on the ground at all. You would only see grass. And it looked cool, but it was too distracting. So I think the way that I have it set up now, where it's just like sprinkled around little places, I think it's a lot better. Why does the lighting look better? Yeah, I put a lot of work into the lighting. It's way better. And I think the big change is that the edges of each light source is a lot softer. Because before it was like a hard circle light around each light source. And whoops. And the problem would come up whenever two light sources would collide. So like I'm carrying this torch and I walk up to a bonfire. And since those two edges were so harsh, they would collide in a very awkward way. And that was the big problem I was facing recently. And I think that this cave here... Oh, no. This cave is all messed up. You guys see this? Yeah, this is messed up. So you can see the tiles are really messed up in this map. And by the way, thank you so much for all you do. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to put out tutorials. I love it. This map is messed up because the indexing for the tiles is wrong. So let me go and find this. This is C home. Oh, look. Yeah, this is wrong. So let's get rid of this. And I think what I'm looking for is this. There we go. That looks better. Okay, I should be able to leave and come back in and it should fix itself. Oh, what happened? Oh, E1. Yeah, that's right. Okay, you guys are seeing me bug fix in real time. So what happened there was this box right here. This is what triggers the transition from one map to another. Not all maps have this. Like this one called D2 and D3. It's able to detect that once you go off screen here, that means you want to go to the next room over, which is this one. It's able to detect that automatically. I have it set up where it figures out what the next room is. But in some cases, like this one's not a part of any grid. This is just a random cave. So I have to put an extra like transition block in here. And this, when the player collides with this block, that's what triggers the transition effect. But what was happening is right now it's sending us to E1, but I recently changed it where there is no E1, instead there's D1. So I changed that to D1, and I think that will fix it fine. The other thing is that this sends us to position 45684. Let me make sure that's still accurate. 46, yep, that's still right. So that's good. I don't care if you ever use version control, but I'm curious how many commits a project like this accumulates. That's an awesome question, and I do use version control. By the way, if anyone out there doesn't use version control, I understand that it takes some learning to get used to, but version control is extremely important. It's extremely important. I think I can just show this. I'm just going to go ahead and show this. So this is my GitHub repo for Moonshire. If you didn't know, I do have an open source version of this game called Legend of Lua. It doesn't have nearly as many features as Moonshire, but it has like the foundation in place. But someone asked about commits, and Moonshire has, what was it just said a second ago? It has almost 1,700 commits. So yeah, and then that's not even including Legend of Lua, because Legend of Lua has its own commits, which is 282. So 282 plus 691, we're like at 1900. So I'm using Edge browser. Oh my gosh, I know. It's kind of a... It's been kind of a thing recently because I feel like Google isn't quite as good as it used to be. You know, maybe a hot take. Maybe that's controversial, but I don't really like Google search anymore because there's just so many sponsored searches. And I've been using Edge because it has Copilot built in. And I don't use ChatGPT or Copilot very often for generative text. I use it for coding sometimes, or for like once in a while in my code. I use DuckDuckGo specifically when I don't want any history involved, or I don't want... I want specific results. Sponsor plus AI search is polluted. Yeah, I completely agree. Right now, I think Google search is in a bad state. I don't think Bing search is in a good state either. I don't really like either of them. But at least Edge has Copilot at the moment, and I kind of like that. I know like generative AI gets a bad rap, and I think it deserves a bad rap in a lot of places, bad rep. And that being said, I still like it. I still think generative AI is very cool. I keep up with it. I try to use it once in a while, not for like the images just aren't good enough to use yet, so I don't really use it. The like text and stories that it generates is like kind of good, but normally it's not very good. I use it for like brainstorming. Like I'll ask it, what are some cool ideas for a weapon that does blah blah blah, and then it will like give me some concepts for weapons, and I can kind of run with those ideas sometimes. I'll use that. WTF, Google searches results not good anymore. What I've noticed is that it's very curated with ads more now than it used to be. That's just my observation. I don't know if that's true, but in my experience, I feel like the searches haven't been as good. I'm sure everyone's gonna have their own experiences with it. I've just been having more frustration with Google, so I'm just trying out Edge. And also, by the way, I don't know if you guys knew this, Edge is built with Chromium now. So when Edge came out, it was like Internet Explorer alternative, and it was just kind of the laughing stock of internet browsers, right? Like no one really likes Edge. But probably 4 or 5 years ago, they transitioned Edge over into being based on Chromium. So it runs on the same sort of foundations that Chrome runs on. And really, I've noticed almost no difference between how the two browsers perform. The only difference is the features included, like Edge has Copilot, and Google has all of the extensions and all of the built-in like Google apps and all that stuff. But they can both do the exact same thing. Can you edit your character and use it in your game? You can edit the character from Legend of Lua. So which one is it? It is this one. So if you go to GitHub, I have this code base called Legend of Lua, or this repo, and this one is completely open source. So the story behind Moonshire is that for the first few years, I was making the game and it looked like this. It was like an open source version of a Zelda-like game. And all of the stuff in this repo is completely open source. You can use it however you want, including the character. If you want to take this character and do stuff with it, by all means. But this character doesn't have all of the animation frames that are in Moonshire, and this version is also a bit fatter. There's some details missing from him, so it's not the exact same character, but it is a good starting point. And I think this code base is really nice. It has a lot of helpful stuff in there. Are the tile stats in there? Yeah, I think so. Not my current ones, but it has some. It has these. Oh, geez, that has a whole bunch of garbage. I should clean this up, but this is the main one that it has. This is built off of ARM 1998, I think is his name. But this is an open source tile sheet right here. I don't even think I edited this. I think this is just the base one that he released online. And this is what most of the assets were built on. Actually, I think I have... Yeah, this is the one that uses my color palette. So actually the one that I'm thinking of is tile sets and an overworld edit. How do you decide on color palette? So there's this website, and let me pull it off screen just in case. It's called Low Spec. Low Spec. Okay. So if you're looking for a color palette for a game, I'm so sorry, by the way. I'm trying to make fewer mouth noises. I hope you can't hear me like swallowing. I have a big problem with stuttering and making mouth noises. I'm trying to reduce that. So anyway, lowspec.com. You can go over to palettes. And what this is it's just a really long curated list of different palettes. And I love the site because it has little samples, little sample images of like, oh, well, I like the reds and the darkness of this one, so maybe this one would be a good one. Or this one's desaturated. I like the desaturated colors here. And so going through low spec is a really good way to get a foundation. I got my color palette from here, but I did edit it. The one I got is called Lua P. Actually, I could probably search for it. Is there a search? Search by tag? Lua P? No? It's not a tag. How do you search for, I guess I'll search for it through Bing, I guess. Lua P, low spec. Here it is. So this is the color palette that I use for my game. If you look closely, though, you will see that these colors are way less saturated compared to my colors. In fact, I can show you specifically what my colors are now because I have the color palette saved. Let me pull it up real quick. Okay, let me try and make this bigger. Okay, so this is the updated palette, and it's subtle. The difference between this palette and this palette, it is subtle. Like, let's be real, they're basically the same. But all I did was I took this Lua P one, and I put it into A-Sprite and just boosted the saturation. And I know you're probably not supposed to do that. I bet that on like a fundamental level, by boosting the saturation to get this color palette, I bet some of these colors don't go together quite as well as these ones do. But I like how the saturation looks in this. I think the colors are strong, and I like it. And also, I still add colors to this. Like, I bet that a lot of the player colors aren't on this color palette. Normally what I do is whenever I'm making a sprite, I will choose one color to start with, and then I will make my own colors to like add the shading. How's the cat doing? She's doing great. Thank you for asking. So the way that this looks, I like, and especially if you look at some of my early videos where I first implemented this color palette, it is noticeable how desaturated this is. And by the way, I keep saying desaturated. Let me kind of actually show what that means. Because I keep saying desaturated as if everyone knows what that means. But, let's go to A-Sprite, and I'm going to go to Adjustments, Hue Saturation. So saturation is how much color we see, the strength of the color. If I lower the saturation, everything will get more gray. So this is a saturation boosted down. It's the same color, it's just more gray. The colors pop way less. And if I bring the saturation all the way down, it becomes black and white. So black and white images is just 0 saturation. And then again, this is what saturation looks like at 0. And I can boost the saturation even more. So if I boost the saturation, it's subtle, but the colors are stronger. This is before, after, before, after. You can see that the colors are just getting more strong and more bright. It's not really brightness, it's strength, because there's also lightness, because This is when you boost the saturation, and this is when you boost the lightness. It gets more white. So boosting the saturation adds more color, like this. It adds more color, and boosting the lightness adds more white. So it just makes everything more white and brighter. But saturation actually makes the colors pop more. So that's how I handled my color palette. Is I downloaded Lua P, and I put it in here, and I played around with the saturation, and I found one that I liked. Would I recommend Godot or Unity? They're both good. I like them both. Unity has more resources out there, but Godot is growing in popularity, and it's open source. So that's a pretty big benefit. They're both good. Really, I think whatever one you like the best is the one you should go with. A grayscale game would be really dope, though. In fact, I can just show you what my game would look like in grayscale. So if I go to shaders and I go to town, I have a saturation value right here. I'm gonna try and make it bigger so everyone can see. So in town, I have all these values set for like the color mixing in the background and the darkness and stuff. There's also a value for saturation. I can go ahead and turn saturation to 0. So saturation is completely 0. And when I start the game, the world is in black and white. And this is actually pretty cool. This is the first time I've seen the game in black and white. I've never done this before. And I'm pretty impressed with how this looks. I think it looks pretty neat. I think it would be cool to add like a level or two or a cutscene or something that's completely black and white, because this is pretty neat. And this is accomplished strictly through shaders. All that I'm doing is using shaders to reduce the saturation down to 0, and it becomes a grayscale world. Now, the reason that the characters aren't grayscale is because I have a shader immune property. So if I go over to player, I showed this in the last stream. It was color immune. I have this property called color immune, and since I have it to true, that is why the player maintains his color, and that's why like this dummy has his color, the NPC and the items have their colors. Is because I have this color immune property set to true. But if I were to set this false and I start the game, the player is now grayscale as well. Actually, the weapon is also grayscale. I didn't realize that. Oh, actually, all the weapons are grayscale. That's a bug. That doesn't make sense, actually, does it? Why would setting player.colorimmune, why does that influence the spears down here? Why does that influence my torch that I'm carrying? I wouldn't expect it to. That's kind of weird. So, that seems like a bug to me. I actually kind of want to fix that. Let's fix that on stream, because that sounds kind of interesting. So is there anywhere else I'm using color immune? Okay. Specifically player.colorimmune. Player. Oh, okay. So this is actually interesting. I didn't realize I did this. So I made it so that you can set in the game map if the player will be color immune or not. So this is something that you can adapt through each individual map. Was color reset to 111 after? Yeah. What is the advantage of doing a game in Lua? There's no real advantage of any engine over another engine. I wouldn't say there's an advantage of using Lua or Love2D. The only advantage is that I like it. That's the only advantage. And it's the same with Unity. If you like Unity more, then that's your advantage. That's the biggest advantage you could have. Any engine can make good games, and since any engine can make good games, just choose the one you like. That's the way I see it. If you like the engine that you use, it'll be a lot more fun to make games. So what I'm trying to do is figure out why, like, my torch was affected by color immune, and I really don't think it should be. Actually, this might be in Sprite Manager, maybe? No? Actually, it might be Sprite Manager, and then there's probably color immune here. Color immune, no, there's not. I don't think I know how to fix this problem. I mean, thankfully, it's not a very big problem. It's a pretty minor problem that color immune on player affects weapons as well. It shouldn't, but I don't think it's that big of a problem. I don't know how to fix it. I'd have to dig into it, so I'm just gonna leave it as is. It's not really that big of a deal. It's in weapon.lua. Okay, well, let's see. I mean, yeah, so there's a color immune here. Oh, okay. That's why. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, this is why. Because when the weapon's created, it's set to match player. I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. I probably always want weapons to match player that color immune. So this isn't. Oh, I'm sorry. My camera was covering it. The problem was that I have this line here. When a weapon is created, its color immune property is always set to match whatever player's color immune property is. So what I thought was happening was that player.colorimmune was being used to apply everything, but instead it's just like we're copying it over. So that's the main thing. And check chat. Yeah, so I try to check chat once in a while. My problem is I will start answering a question, and then I focus on completely answering that question until I finish, and then I go back to chat. Because otherwise what happens is I look at chat, and then I read a question, and then I answer that question, and then I completely lose my train of thought of what I was talking about before. It happens every single time. So I always have to kind of wait. You love Godot, but you don't really like GD script. Yeah, actually, I don't think I've ever even seen what GD script looks like. I'd love to check it out. Sorry for stuttering. I need to chill out and stop talking so fast. But and some people tell me that they don't like Lua either, and I understand why, because it's a bit more verbose. Like, some people don't like these ends or the thens. It's kind of annoying. I can get that. A lot of people don't like the indexing at 1, which I totally get that. So arrays, if I said my array, the first index is not 0, the first index is 1. And I know all the programmers out there just cringed so hard seeing that, because most programming languages start at index 0 for good reason. I think I prefer index 0 more, but having used Lua for a long time, index 1 has grown on me. I don't dislike it anymore. It does make sense in some circumstances. That index is going to break my mind. I totally understand. I'm completely with you. When I first started when I first started using Lua, I felt the same way. Why is the first index 1? That's super weird. Yeah, I know it's super weird. Why is the index 1 though? I'd like to come up with a good answer, because I know for a fact that there are times when I enjoy the index being 1. Like in for loops, but I'm trying to think of which for loops it would be. So one of the biggest downsides, I can think of a downside of it being 1, is with new UI, because I have to do things like I minus 1. So this is a good example of why index 1 is less intuitive for programming in a lot of circumstances. Because since the index is 1, or starts at 1, that means my for loop is also going to start at 1, because I need to get the first index of options. But that conflicts with the way I'm handling my my self.ty, because now I need to reduce the index by 1 to get back down to 0, because the first option is going to be at self.ty, and therefore having I equal to 0 would be nice, because it would cancel out all of this calculation here. I'm sorry, I keep covering it with my camera. I'm so sorry about that. Sorry, let me explain that again. So it would be nice if I was just 0. If I started at 0, and it would just cancel out all of this stuff here. But instead, I have to subtract 1 from I, because it starts at 1, and we need this section to be 0 in order for the t.y to be just consistent. That's one example of when index 1 is bad. But I'll circle back on this, because I know for a fact that while I'm coding, there are times when I like that it's indexed at 1. So I'll circle back on this, and I'll answer that question later, because I want to give a good answer. Right now, I can't think of a good reason why it would be at 1. Hey man, I loved your mono game course on Udemy. That's awesome. Would you still recommend mono game for beginning game dev? Yeah, sure, why not? Any framework like Love2D or mono game is going to be a little bit harder to learn compared to an engine like Unity or Godot or GameMaker. The learning curve is steeper, but you really learn all the aspects of it. And I feel like I have a full understanding of my code base, which is something I don't think I would get in like Godot or Unity, because it handles a lot of the heavy lifting for you in Unity. And that's good because it makes development faster, but it's kind of bad because when there's a bug, it's harder to debug because you don't quite understand everything. But it's also a good thing because Unity is so popular that when there is a bug, someone's probably encountered it before and they know what the problem is. So like it's a big pro and con. Like I always say, just choose one that meshes with you best. Would jumping off a game engine into a framework make it easier? Probably, I'd say so. That's kind of what I did, because I started with GameMaker back when I was a kid, and then I switched over to learning actual coding in Love2D, and yeah, I'd say that was a bit easier. As a Brit, I've gotten so used to color, I have to double check what yeah. It's in draw. If only we changed it to love.graphics that set color like this. That's actually a funny thought. I never really considered that because I know that there's a lot of differences between our spelling, and you kind of have to go with the Americanized version, I imagine. That's a funny problem I never really thought about. Actually, for people out there, because I know that a lot of people in this chat are from like different countries. Do people out there not speak English and still code? Because I'm pretty sure all coding languages are still in English. Do you have to learn English in order to learn how to code too? Or is there some intuitiveness to this that you don't necessarily need to learn English? I'm curious, has anyone had experience with that? You've seen Chinese coding languages? That's pretty interesting, that's cool. And that makes sense because you code and you speak Arabic. They learn English, yeah, there are some that are in other languages. Yeah, I think it's more just that English being so popular and ubiquitous, it makes sense to develop languages in English. But at the same time, like you said, like Chinese coding languages also make sense because imagine the number of Chinese coders out there. It's ridiculous to exclude them from being able to code just because they don't speak English. Imagine coding in Old English. Ye old love.graphics.set color. Yeah. Here in Brazil, people learn the basics and sometimes use like variables and functions in Portuguese names. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because like Lua, for example, or any programming language, there's a set number of reserved words in English. Because you have to use the word class or use the word new or object or, you know, parent. These are reserved English words that you need to use. But there's no rule that says that you have to name all of your variables. Like, I named this variable foreground, but there's absolutely nothing stopping me from naming it the Portuguese equivalent of this word. Sorry, I keep stuttering. And same with like draw new shadows. I named all of these myself. All of these words here, I just named them myself. So there's nothing stopping someone from naming them things in your own language. Actually, the only problem is that some things you can't change the name of, like if and then, and this function here, this is from Love2D. This is like, you wouldn't be able to rename this to a different language thing. So if you did name your variables like Spanish names or Italian names, it would be a mixture of Spanish and English in the same file. And that I could see that looking bad, yeah. It would be less readable, and it would restrict the number of people who would be able to interact with your code, because then only like native speakers would be able to read your code. It does make sense to make English a standard and keep it that way, but at the same time, I feel bad for people that are excluded from that, because sure, I'm fortunate that I speak English, but that's just me being lucky. I'm lucky that I speak the one language that is used in all programming. And I actually feel bad for people that don't get that luxury. I'm very fortunate to have that. It would be a challenge because coding in itself is hard enough, but coding when you don't speak English, I have to imagine is like 10 times harder because you have to go extra slow. You have to methodically read through this because I took Spanish for 4 years when I was in high school. And, you know, by the end of those 4 years, I could read Spanish okay, but I was really slow at it. Basically, what I had to do is I had to translate everything in my mind to English and then comprehend it in English. It's not like I could read a line in Spanish and then understand what it meant without translating it. And so I imagine that coders have to do the same thing, where they're probably constantly translating like words in their mind in order to understand what they're even reading, and that's just slow. That's how you speak Turkish, even though you learned it before English. Yeah, that makes sense. As a Grayson, gray is incorrect. Do I use the word gray? Yeah, so I spell gray with an E. I think that's how British people spell it, G-R-E-A. Yeah, so I spell gray like this, G-R-E-Y. And I think that's how British people spell it, right? Actually, let me look at it. Look it up. Gray versus gray. Gray and gray are both common spellings for the color, and gray is more frequent in American English, whereas gray is more common in British English. Okay, that makes sense. I don't know, something about the spelling G-R-E-Y makes more sense to me. It's probably strange that I spell it with an E-Y, actually, because I spell everything else with American English. That's interesting. I don't know why I do that. I don't know why I do that. Whoops. I'm still getting used to streaming. I need a little bit of a better streaming setup because I'm all on one monitor, but it's my big monitor. So I just have all the stream stuff squished to one side while what you're seeing on stream is in the middle. So it's a little bit awkward sometimes. As a person in a country with English as a national second language, I don't care if it's E or A. I mean, yeah, it's the same with me. I don't care if it's spelled one way or the other. I think gray is one of those words where it's probably interchangeable enough where you wouldn't notice it. But something like color, in the US, no one spells color like this. This would be shocking if someone spelled it like this. Not shocking. It wouldn't be shocking if I saw someone spell color like this. It would just indicate to me that they are from England. That's all it would, or from somewhere in that area. That's all that I mean. I could get a second monitor, but the thing is, my setup is so clean. My setup is so clean. Do you guys want to see my setup? I'm gonna try and move the camera so you guys can see it. Okay, I'm back. That's what I get That's what I get for moving my camera around. Sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. that was dumb. I'm sorry for doing that. But I really wanted to show my big monitor. I love my big monitor. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me now. I think I'm back. But yeah, anyway. I will be careful not to make that mistake again. Oh, shoot. I'm trying to make sure that my settings are right. What tips do you have for a student looking to get into freelance coding? I don't know. I actually don't know if I've done freelance coding before. Because I think that a goal for a student would be less to do freelance coding and more to build your skill set. Because when you're a student, that implies that you're still learning, right? You're trying to get better at your skills. And freelance implies that you're trying to make money. So first you need to decide, do you want to make money or do you want to learn? And my advice for a student would be to focus on learning. And I don't think that involves making money, because making money, you kind of already have to have your skills established in order to do that. Was I in FANG? I worked at Microsoft. So that's not FANG, but you know, some would argue. I think it's better than FANG. It's more valuable on the stock market, at least. I've been coding for 5 years and want to start making money. Oh, totally. But you can't get a job because you're a student. Okay, I understand what you're saying. I actually really don't know. I think that would... Freelance coding. So I guess you'd have to be more specific with what kind of coding you want to do, because if you wanted to be like a web developer and work at a company or be a contractor, you have to have some sort of baseline or some way to sell yourself for it. Because if a company wanted to hire someone to do coding for them, they're gonna hire someone experienced, and they might even just hire a company. And that's not, I don't mean that to discourage you. I'm trying to think of some way where a coder who's been coding for 5 years, because that's a long time. If you're 5 years experience coding, you're probably good enough to make stuff and help people out. I'm sorry I can't answer that. I don't know a good answer of how to make money, like freelancing and stuff. I know a lot about getting jobs because I've had multiple jobs. And I could answer that, but I don't really know exactly how to freelance. I'm sorry. The only freelance experience I have is with teaching, because I have the Udemy courses and I make money that way. Cream of the crop Microsoft programmer. Yeah, it's more that their standards for getting in is very high, and you just have to study a lot. Do I code with music on or podcast? It changes. Normally podcasts or Let's Plays. You know, that sounds lame. Listen to Let's Plays. I love Let's Plays. I prefer Let's Plays more than playing games. That sounds really stupid. But I love listening to other people play games because it's way more fun to me. This is because when the massive layoffs hit, some people did freelancing. The layoffs is such a bummer. It's sad because the layoffs started happening while I was working still, so it was really common to see people let go. I was seeing people laid off from my company and from other companies. Obviously, right now it's just kind of a tough market, and yeah, I imagine getting into freelancing is also tough because with so many people laid off, they're probably it's just steep competition. Who do you go to? Let's Play? Oni plays. It's sad, but honestly, I think it's a good thing though. It sucks how many people have their families were affected. That's the biggest thing, is like, these are big companies and they overhired during COVID, and now they need to let go of all these people that they hired. And you might think, oh well, it sucks that these people join and immediately leave, but like you said, they all have families. They moved and they established themselves, and now they have to start fresh. And some of these jobs were prestigious, where they establish a lifestyle making like 6 figures, and then suddenly they lose their job, and now everyone's losing their job, so there's no more 6-figure jobs anymore. how to get a job at Microsoft. You just apply and interview well. The biggest challenge is interviewing. I didn't make a company. When I said, if I said my company, what I meant was the company I worked for. I'm sorry for being misleading. Your previous job went bankrupt due to overhiring. I imagine a lot of companies in the pandemic era also suffer that same sort of thing. That would be cool if whatever rose would be how you equip spells. That's a common idea that gets brought up once in a while, which is something along the lines of changing your cloak color is what changes what abilities you have. And I thought about this. I've mulled it over. I've talked it over. I really considered it because it's a good idea. But in the end, I decided not to do that because I want people to play with whatever color they want. I don't really want people to feel like they have to play the pink character just because the pink character has some specific ability that they want to use. I'd rather them to be able to play as their favorite color and use their favorite abilities. It's similar to how I was just playing Baldur's Gate 3 with my friend. And as I was creating my character, I was like, oh, I want to make a half-elf barbarian with this, and my friend's like, oh, well, half-elves don't make good barbarians. You should choose something else. I'm thinking, well, I'd rather just make a character that I identify with and that I want to play as, that has all, like, I don't want the game to tell me what options are viable. I feel like they all should be viable, and just let me roleplay however I want. Can you get an internship at a game dev company? I think that just game dev industry, software industry is tough right now. You absolutely can. It just means that you have to set yourself apart. Think of it as a competition, because when you do that, it kind of makes things more realistic. Think about all the people that would want this internship and and what steps you need to take in order to beat them. Because that sounds harsh, but it is a competition. There are going to be hundreds of people applying for this internship that you have in mind, and you need to be the one that the company picks. And like, that sounds dire and sad, but that's how it was when I applied for Microsoft. It's worse now, probably, but it was really tough. It was really, really competitive. And the only option when it's really competitive is to win. It requires you to study hard and to work hard and to set yourself apart in whatever means necessary. And if you're young, that's good, because that means you have your whole life ahead of you to build up those skills and set yourself apart. And it also gives you time to hopefully let the market like get a little bit better. But that, never stop applying, never stop learning, and never stop improving your skills, because that's what's going to get you the internship. You feel bad though because you stole from somebody. Sure, that's one way to look at it, but at the same time, they're stealing it from you. And at the end of the day, we all can agree that the internship should go to whoever deserves it the most, or rather, whoever is the best fit for it. And if you are the best fit for it, then it's completely fair for you to receive the job. If you aren't the best fit for it and you get the job, then yeah, that's not fair. I would also feel bad for beating out people that were better than me. But the only solution then is to be the best. And that's how you get the internship. And that's hard. It takes a long time to get good. It takes a long time to be the best, to beat out everyone else. But that's what it takes. It's not a steal. You could say that someone joined the job because yeah, exactly. I don't see it as stealing. It's may the best man win. You could did like whoever won the gold medal at the Olympics this year, did they steal it from the silver medalist, or did they just earn first place? That's the way I see it. It's the same with a job. It's a competition, and it's the same with like selling games. This is another hot take with games that a lot of people aren't into. It's that when you're selling games for money on a marketplace, it's a competition. Your game is competing with every other game on the marketplace. If you're selling your game for $10, that means you are competing with every other $10 game out there, because you need to put yourself in the position of like a 14-year-old kid who got like their birthday money and they had $50 to spend. So this Uh, did you know that getting gold medal in the Olympics gets you $37,000? That's pretty good. Jeez, this is why I can't answer questions in the middle of my rants, because I forget what my train of thought was. Jeez, I'm so sorry. I keep. Oh yeah, it was the price tag. It was the competitive market. It's that when you put your game on Steam, for example, the price that you set it at, people are going to compare your price and your game to other games at that price. So if you're a 14-year-old kid and you have $50, you're going to have to pick and choose which games you want to spend that $50 on. And if your game is $25, it better be pretty good, because this 15-year-old kid is only going to be able to buy like your game and one other game. But if your game is $5, well, this kid might have a more likelihood of buying your game because they could buy your game and still buy another really good game. Set a game at $150 and always make the discount for $20. I remember seeing some kind of scam specifically about that. Did I make all my Moonshire sprites? No. A lot of them are made from hired work. I hired some sprite artists, and I also use a lot of open source and paid assets. Do I have a plan for marketing my game? I'd say that what I'm doing right now counts as marketing. Because like when I buy an indie game, it's because I heard about it through a streamer or from a YouTuber or from like IGN reviews, or someone is talking about it in some way. I don't think I need to do any marketing at all. Like run ads. Has anyone ever bought an indie game after seeing an ad for the indie game? I don't know if I have. I certainly haven't. So I think it's more like, I think the best way to market the game is to just make a very good game and then hope that people play it. Does DLC count? Does DLC count for what? I can't remember what we were talking about. I'm sorry. Yeah, so with ads, it's I'm sure there's a way to do ads, because I'm talking about ads from a place of ignorance, because I've never sold something using ads. I've never really sold a product at all before. So I like to think that ads don't work on people, but certainly they do. Certainly they do work, because if they didn't work, then people wouldn't run ads. So I should at least consider it. Maybe I should meet with like an actual marketing agency and see what they say. At the same time, though, all I can think about is like what would make me buy a game, and seeing like a YouTube ad probably would not make me buy a game. But watching Oni Plays play it, that definitely would do it. Or watching a streamer, or watching some cool clip on YouTube. Anything would do it for me, as long as like the game's good. I don't really need an advertisement to tell me that. Didn't you say the scam ad from mobile games do work? Good point. Very good point. Very, very good point. I think I just disproved myself right there. So obviously they do work. And I think what this means is that they may not work on me, but they do work on some people. And that means I don't understand it. Because this means that I would need to make an ad that appeals to someone other than me. An advertisement that convinces someone other than me to buy this product. And I don't know how to do that. I would need to hire someone to help me make an ad that fits that criteria, because I know how to advertise to people like me. It's just to make a good game and make good content. But I don't know how to advertise to people that aren't like me and that might not see this game and immediately buy it. I probably do need help with marketing. You know what? I think I've had a complete shift in my mentality. I think marketing will be important, but at the same time, what I'm doing right now, I think is more important, and it's also what I enjoy more. So I don't really want to spend time. How to find your Udemy course? I think if you go to kyleshop.com, or if you go to Udemy and type in Love2D, it's the first one. That's the main one. You have a main plan for marketing your game. Yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about, is that I don't really have a plan for marketing the game. The only plan I have currently is to make a good game and then make YouTube videos about it as I create it. And so far that's been working well, because the game has a good number of wish lists and it has a lot of attention, and the game is barely functional at this point. It still has a long ways to go. But it is fun, and it has a lot of good selling points. Have I seen Watt Design's game, Isle Goblin? Yes, I have. What you're doing now is technically marketing. Yeah, that's what I was saying, is that by streaming and showing off the game and doing all this stuff, this is marketing to an extent, because also it creates a VOD for YouTube. People will watch that, and people will see the game, and the more I talk about Moonshire, that's marketing. That's true. I think when people say marketing, though, it's kind of referring more to the traditional type, where it's actually advertisements that get impressions and stuff. Excuse me. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I have a bit of a cough. So this is marketing, but I think when people say marketing, they are referring to like more than this, because there is more I could do. I could do paid ads, and in fact, like with YouTube, I think I've paid for more exposure before, maybe once or twice. I think what this comes down to is that marketing is more complicated than I think it is. And since that's the case, there's probably more opportunity with advertising than I think there are. Because it's easy for me to say, oh, there's no opportunities with advertising, I'll just keep making YouTube videos. But no, I bet there are plenty. I bet there are plenty of ways I could market the game that I just don't know about, and that could reach an audience that I don't know about either. Ads, events, publicity via social media, and publicity through streaming/content creation. I would say so. That's yeah, that makes sense to me. Do I know any other streamers? Pay them to show off your game. I actually don't know any other streamers personally, but some streamers have played the game already. If you look up Moonshire, there's a few people that played it. Like oh, what was his name? Quinn Bobin played it, and I know that... shoot, I can't remember the other guy's name. The other guy was bigger, but I know a few people have. Your game is marketed well through shorts. I think so too, but I need to make more. I'm planning to hire a local editor soon, and that'll help me put out more content. But I think overall what this comes down to is I should get a second opinion on other stuff I could do to market. Because I think I'm doing enough right now, but someone smarter than me or more knowledgeable than me about marketing could probably help me do more. I'm gonna go here. Nope, this is the one I was already at. I haven't showed... You can edit out the stutter. Yeah. I think really what I need to do more is just practice not stuttering. Really what happens is I get overexcited. I talk very fast when I know what I'm going to say, and it just makes me slur my words so bad. Have I heard of Chris, How to Market a Game? I have seen a channel called How to Market a Game, so I think I have heard of Chris. Well, we all do it. Yeah, I agree that we all do it, but at the same time, if I'm going to be streaming more, I just want to practice not doing that. What's your process to create Moonshire's story? That's a good question, and really what it comes down to is... How do I make Moonshire's story? I want to wait to answer that until I get a story in place, because the story in the game isn't really there. It's more abstract and doesn't really... There's no real goals in the game yet. But I have a story planned and written, and I guess my process is write a big story with all the details you want. I have no story in the game right now. I have a story in my head and like on paper, but it's not finalized because the story isn't the important part. The game and the levels and the layout is the important part, and then building a story around that is how that all plays together. Because what I was trying to do was I wrote the story, and then I was putting all these levels together to fit the story, and then the story changes, and then now the levels need to change because, you know, my story changed. And the levels serve the story. Like, the order that you go about the levels or your options at any given time is pretty dependent on the story. Did I make the story before making the game? No. And there's no final story, there's no story in the game yet because of that, because I want the game to be more set before I do anything like that. Do you have other main characters? No, not at the moment, but you can change the color. That's one of the big selling points of this game, is that you can change your color to whatever you want and mix and match the different colors. My favorite mixture is this one. It's white hood, white belly, with green body and green feet and green eyes. Where do I code? I use Visual Studio Code. So this is what I use to code. Any tips for Love to D for beginners? Just make a small game. Make a small game, follow tutorials. Make like a little game where you just walk around and pick up coins, and then that's it. Just make simple games, and once you make a really, really simple small game, then make another one. What's your opinion on clan? I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. Do ideas for your story build inside your head along with the assets you make? Yeah, I would say aspects of the story come from lots of places. Because sometimes I'll see like a pre-made sprite online and I'll be like, oh, I could use this to insert X story. Other times, actually what really happens is I have a story in mind, and then I will ask Ellie, my artist, to design some sprites for it, and then I change my mind. Or sorry, so like, let me find a good example. Oh, come on. This character. So this character I had in the game a long time ago, because a long time ago I wanted the story to be a story about how this character was like your teacher, and there was like an opening scene where she was teaching you how to shatter your weapon. And then the story changed. The story changed where this character, there is no teacher anymore. The main character that you play as, you just start off on your own and you go about your journey. It's just like the original Legend of Zelda, that you just start. And I like it better that way. But this character here is still really cool. I like this character a lot. And since that's the case, I still want to use this character somehow. And that's how a lot of the story and characters kind of evolve. Is I originally was working with Ellie to make this sprite. I told her I want a sage. I want a teacher. This character is going to teach the player how to shatter their weapon and heal. And we went through all that process. We went through, like, this is several iterations in. I love how this looks. And then it turns out I'm not going to be using it. What a shame. But instead, I now have this really good looking sprite. And that means I can use the sprite to do something different. I can use this sprite for a different character. So just seeing this character here, I kind of get a little bit of inspiration. Like, what could I do? What kind of story could I tell with this character in my game's world? And I'd say that's a starting point I go off of a lot, because there's so much content, so many sprites that we work on that I just don't use. And now that I have this big collection of unused sprites, I've been going through them and thinking, how can I use this in a new way? How can I adapt the story to fit this character so that it makes sense and I can use the sprite that I paid for? Turn into the final boss. I want to make her, at the moment, I think I am going to make her into a friendly character, but I haven't fully decided. How are you supposed to beat the first boss in the army, guys? It's tough, but if you heal and shatter your weapons, because that fight, I designed it where all the guys, they drop their spears and they drop the torches. You can use those to heal. So while fighting the Daitengu, if you... Actually, I could probably do it in this. Actually, maybe. No, I can't. But yeah, just the trick is just to make sure that you're healing. Excuse me, I have a scratchy throat. Why not use a game engine, or are there any? Excuse me. Are there any advantages? What I always say is to use the engine or framework that you like best. And I tried using Unity, and I like it, but I tried using Love2D, and I liked it more. So even though using a framework is probably less efficient, it's probably it is less efficient, and it has far fewer features than Unity. But also, I'm fully in control of everything. If I want something in the game, I have to manually do it, and part of me likes that because I understand the code base really, really well, and there's a lot to be said for that, because when any bugs come up, I'm able to fix my bugs very fast because I understand exactly what's going wrong pretty much immediately because I know where all the code is. Obviously, there's some exceptions, and it's getting worse because there's so many files now that sometimes I'll think I'll know where the bug is, and then it turns out it's in one of my other files because there's just so many lines. Making Lua tutorials would actually be a good idea. So I have one long Lua tutorial on my channel. I think that's a good starting point. In fact, it's just a few videos old. If you go to Chalcade, there's a video from a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that I posted. Is the story a big aspect of the game? It's a big aspect of the game in the same way that it's a big aspect of the game in Elden Ring, where not really. But here's the other thing. I love Elden Ring's story so much. I think Elden Ring tells its story in the best way possible because it's so cool and so mysterious, and it doesn't waste your time. Elden Ring's story is so good. It wastes no time, but it still tells every story. It fleshes out every character. There's so much cool lore, so much cool history. I love Elden Ring's story, and I love the way it tells its story. So my answer will probably be to tell the story through brief dialogue and through like item descriptions and, you know, whatever else. I want a deep story that's not boring and in your face and time consuming. I hate when games waste my time, especially with dialogue and cutscenes and story stuff. I've been using Unity for years and you like it a lot. Trying to broaden your horizons a bit. Yeah, I think it's a good idea because once you know one engine or one framework, learning another is pretty easy. Or I should say it's easier than when you first learned your first one. And then learning your third one is even easier yet. I'd say learning an engine and then learning a different engine is really easy. And then once you learn a framework, learning another framework is really easy. The differences between like Love2D and Unity is pretty big. There's still going to be a learning curve, but if you already know coding and you already know the fundamentals of like Unity or Godot or something, it would come pretty quickly compared to if you're starting from scratch. Coding is only as hard as mastering one language. I completely 100% agree. Some people would call that a hot take. Some people love the idea of like they think of languages as like real world languages, but really they're all the same. Once you learn Java, you basically already know C#. And once you know Lua, you basically already know Python. There's differences, sure. There's different libraries, there's different wordings, there's different formats, but at the end of the day, they all have classes and if statements and tables and, you know, you can do all these things in all of them, with some exceptions. Java and C# are practically identical, yeah, I know. When I interviewed for Microsoft, I used Java in my interview. And then I never used Java again. That was the last time I ever used Java, was for that interview. After that, it was just C#. I prefer C#. Do you plan on making it possible to change the character's color skin? Probably not. You can change the color of like the hood and your clothes and stuff. Do I have a team? I have a few artists that help me with pixel art, but overall, it's mostly just myself. A thing you need for telling a good story is to tell part of the story by the environment. I completely agree. And yeah, and that's one thing that Elden Ring does amazingly. Is like you go to one of these, one of those like rundown little shack towns with all these weird zombie people. It tells a story right away, and some of the stuff they're doing tells a story. Whatever the boss of the dungeon tells a story. Just the existence of certain stuff tells a story, and I love that. It's always a show don't tell. That's always the best way to tell a story. Functional programming, yeah. So with like Lua, I think Lua is considered functional programming, but tables and Lua is so they're so versatile that you can use them kind of like classes. And I showed that last stream. I'm not going to show it again, but Lua being functional, you can basically emulate object-oriented programming. I really don't like functional programming. It just depends on the context. In a game, I think most video games will probably be much better being object-oriented. I think object-oriented programming is probably the best option for a game because games lend themselves really nicely to objects. Like it would be really dumb if I had separate code for this dummy compared to this dummy. They're the same dummy. They're both the same thing. And it would be dumb for me to make a completely separate class for enemies when, like, this is already an enemy. It already has health, it takes damage, it catches on fire. I can apply that exact same code to every enemy so that I don't have to repeat that exact same stuff on all of them. And yeah, I'm doing that even though Lua isn't object-oriented. It still passes the same code to other places, so I might as well show it real quick. So with, like, enemy... it gets the enemy stats, get stats. So every enemy comes from the spawn enemy function, but the individual differences come from enemy get stats. So enemy stats, this file, so like the slime red, I have all of the details about what specifically makes this enemy unique. I tell it all of the information about its animations, the order of its sprite sheets, like its width and height, how fast it moves, its shadow size. All of this stuff is unique specifically to the red slime. And similarly, if I go to the next enemy, the Carnivorok, it has its own set of completely different values. Like, they're the same variables, but different values for all of this stuff because they're different enemies. But at the same time, I don't need a whole separate file for Carnivorok versus Slime Red because at the same time, they're both enemies. They use all of this enemy code here, but just using the individual differences outlined in this file. That's kind of the main thing. Please show beating the first boss. Use the assist options if you can't beat it. Fallout 3 and 4 are the same. You can see the story and history everywhere. Fallout 3, I wish I could get more into Fallout 3 because I started listening to like video essays describing the lore of the Fallout games. Like even the original Fallout 1 and 2. They are so good. The writing and stories that they tell in that game, in those games, they're so good. I can't believe how deep some of those stories get and how interesting some of the characters are. I wish I could get more into it because the post-apocalyptic setting isn't really my thing. And also the RPG aspects are a little bit overbearing for me. I don't really care for Fallout very much just because of that. But man, the lore is so good. I really think the lore in Fallout games are it's amazing. The Lua VM for Love to D is really bad. FP JIT perform GC implementation. Okay, I think I need FP and GC. Can you define those? I don't think I know what FP means and GC means. I know what JIT performance is, but the others, could you define those for me? I like the language. I think the language is very readable, and the big thing that I like is tables. Tables in Lua are awesome. Being able to just like make a table like this and put whatever data I want, it's awesome. I love how flexible tables are because you can treat them as objects too. Because like this enemy, like all this enemy stuff, all of it's just a table. It's just a table. Enemy is a table, and I'm putting all this stuff inside of the table, and it works like a class. It works like an object, just because tables are so versatile. They work really, really well. I'm currently learning CS50, which also uses Love2D. Why did you choose it in the first place? Yeah, also uses Love2D. That's really cool. Why did I choose it in the first place? Because I had been using Game Maker my whole life, mainly from when I was a kid. I was using GameMaker all that time, and I wanted to move on to something that used actual coding because I was in college and I was learning coding. So I started playing around. I tried Unity, I tried Unreal, I tried libgdx because I already knew Java. So I tried out all of these different frameworks, and the one that clicked with me the best was Love2D. So that's the only reason why I use it and why I stick with it, because it just clicked with me. There's no other reason. And now that Love2D has clicked with me, I'm very confident that all the other ones will also click with me, especially libgdx, especially monogame, because frameworks are all very similar to each other. Once you get through like conceptualizing how to make games with a framework, they're all very much the same. Lua is much better to work with than JS, honestly. Well, yeah, that's not saying very much. JS sucks. Sorry, I shouldn't say JS sucks. JavaScript just has so many quirks that, to me, make it unenjoyable to use. When I worked at Microsoft, I didn't use JavaScript. I used TypeScript, which it's a lot like Java versus C#, where C# is just like a little bit of a better version of Java, and TypeScript is just like a little bit of a better version than JavaScript. No, you can say JS sucks. Very valid. I imagine most JS developers would agree with me that JS kind of sucks. But it gets the job done, and it works well. So that's kind of the redeeming factor, is that even though it sucks, it does everything it needs to do. I do like TypeScript more. I'm trying to learn JS so I can make Turbo Warp extensions. Very cool. That sounds neat. Out of curiosity, I am curious if TypeScript is as widely used as I think it is, because I pretty much view TypeScript as just JavaScript without all the quirks, but I don't hear anyone talking about TypeScript. I heard people talking about it at Microsoft, of course, because I worked there, and they made TypeScript, but I still only hear people talking about JavaScript. Exactly. JavaScript has plenty of use cases, and the only reason it sucks is because, it just doesn't have some of the quality of life stuff that different languages have. I don't think it sucks. It's just easy to misuse, and sometimes it's weird, and sometimes it has some quirks. But that's the main thing that it comes down to. But on that note, we are at 10:30 a.m. We've been streaming for an hour and a half, and it is time to call it quits. Is putting games on Steam expensive? No, it costs $100 to put a game on Steam, but they do reimburse you if you make that back. But you do have to have a company incorporated or an LLC or something, and that might cost a little bit of money too. Everybody uses TypeScript, that's why people don't talk about it much. Yeah, I assumed, but yeah. Anyway, this is the end of the stream. Thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. I had a good time. I will be back next week. I have not missed any streams yet. It's been good so far. I've been really enjoying it. Thank you so much again for being here. And I hope to see you next week. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.